Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Rugby Scoop Pod. No more talking. International rugby is upon us. International weekend. What a weekend at Loftus. What a weekend in Dunedin. What a weekend in Australia. What a weekend in Argentina. Welcome, guys. I'm not by myself. I'm joined by Vickers Vuyozanga, former Blitzpoker, former series winner with Blitzpoker, all the way in Russia. We've got the stats man back from his sabbatical, Hugh Griffin. We've got Jade, the weatherman, all the way in Bloemfontein. And all our listeners, thank you guys for joining in and listening and tuning in. We're about to tear it up today. We're tearing it up, no script. We're analyzing every single detail that has taken place from Dunedin at 9 a.m. on Saturday, all the way to 11 p.m. on Saturday evening, where Argentina were the only Southern Hemisphere team to not go over the line. So we're 3-1 Southern Hemisphere. Vickers, how are things going in Russia?
All good, mate. All good. Just trying to recover before tomorrow, work day.
Too much vodka in Russia? What was happening?
No, nothing sort of like that. No, just too much rugby, man. I'm just trying to watch some different things now. I'm even watching the Western Province game, and it's like so boring.
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of rugby over the weekend. Currie Cup has kicked off also this past weekend. We've got the under-20s that are also playing at the same time. It's a lot. Hugh, the gardener, the stats man, how you been since you haven't been with us? 2 weeks now? Sabbatical. How are you?
I'm good, man. Glad to be back. Looking forward to chatting about all the codes today. I'm starting to say codes now, so people think that I really know my rugby.
Fair enough. The weatherman in Bloemfontein, Jade Craig, talk to me.
I hope that's not going to stick, Scoop, the weatherman.
I hope it sticks. How are you doing?
Oh, gosh. No, good, bro. I'm good. I'm just concerned, that Vuyo is getting upset. Or not getting upset, he's getting ready for work tomorrow. Guy's got a dream job. He's a coach. He's doing rugby for a living. So, yeah. Other 9 to 5ers. How much we feel going to work tomorrow?
8 a.m. All right, gentlemen, how we going to be covering things up today. So basically, we'll start off with the All Blacks against England and then move on to Australia against Wales. Hugh, big game for you guys. The Welshman. And then we're going to finish it off with the Springboks and Ireland. Probably touch on a bit about Argentina and France, because France really looking good. Everyone underestimated that French team that was traveling to Argentina, but they really surprised everybody with that performance on Saturday. But Jade, let's kick it off with the All Blacks playing in Dunedin, playing against England, in-form England side. I mean, a lot of conversations were said, a lot of things were said, rather, post-match. Razor coming out and saying, obviously, the English side has been together for some time, but the All Blacks, I mean, they've had, 10-day scramble, basically. I mean, what are your takeaways with this game? And looking at the detail on certain aspects, set piece, scrums and lineouts, breakdown, overall, how do you see the All Blacks performing, and what were the key points for you that stood out for that game?
Yeah, look, Scoop, we spoke about it last week, and we said that, this England team is difficult to beat. I mean, under Baltic, they've become difficult to beat. You're not going to go and beat them by 20 to 30 points. We had that in the start. I mean, with Baltic, where, they were a little bit all over the place. But even in the World Cup, we've seen them. They hang in there. They might not play the best rugby, but they're difficult to beat. They frustrate you. And, I mean, they aren't so afraid to chance their luck, and chance their arm. So, for me, I think the whole 8 days, coming together for the All Black team, I think I wouldn't use it as an excuse because, I mean, this team has played a lot of rugby together. There wasn't any debutants in this All Black squad, actually. For the first time in years, there wasn't any debutants in the first test. So I think Razor, he knew his team. This team has played together. I mean, some of these guys was coming since the 2019 World Cup in that era together. So they've been playing a lot together. But it's just, new voices, new IP, new coaches. So it will take time for them to, to gel. However, I feel that, it was a hell of a game. Both games yesterday, the Boks game as well was a brilliant game, but it was a good game, good test match. England really, really fought and frustrated the All Blacks. They didn't have it their own way. The All Blacks struggled once again with the rush defense. I'm not sure. I would like to get Vuyo's input on it because he's a backline player and a backline coach. Damien McKenzie's positioning, we heard it from Razor after the game. And for everybody listening to the pod, if you want to listen to a really good post-match interview, Razor gave a very, very good post-match interview. Just check it out on YouTube. But Damien McKenzie's positioning, Razor stated after the game that they were one pass away. Razor stated also that, they tried to get around the rush defense. They tried chips. They tried to kick around. They tried to post the wide pass. But I think it also starts there with the positioning with Damien McKenzie, where he was positioned. Maybe he was standing too flat at times. Allowing pressure to come onto Jordi Barrett, who was the second playmaker, basically, or Steven Perafecta when he was in that role. They didn't get that fluency. But if you look at the try that Sehuri scored, we looked at about 14 to 15 phases that the All Blacks put together, and it was a hell of a try. So that's more or less what you're looking at, with Razor, what he's trying to do. Key point from yesterday's game, line-out England bullied the All Blacks at line-out time. All Blacks struggled at line-out time. I think the two key lineouts they got towards the end of the game where so far Moore came on, getting 2 tail balls, and they got 2 penalties from there. But other than that, they struggled. They struggled with the calls. I wasn't sure who was calling. Was it Patrick Tupelotti? Was it Scott Barrett? Because sometimes I saw Adi Savia calling the lineout as well. So I think that was a little bit of a problem. Scrum time, New Zealand were dominant. We expected it. New Zealand do have a good pack. They do have good props, so we expected that. But other than that, if Razor's looking at it, there's so much work to do. Positives from the All Blacks, I would give from the side is breakdown. They only conceded 1 penalty at the breakdown. That was a turnover before halftime where they chanced their luck, and I think it was Ollie Lawrence got a turnover where Marcus Smith made it 10-all. They conceded 1 turnover. They didn't concede 1 penalty for being offside or penalty at ruck time during the game. So that's actually a positive from the All Blacks because that was actually a weak point. Coming into this Razor era was how they can handle the breakdown. A guy like Galton Papali, did the dirty work again yesterday, putting in 15 tackles. You saw Ben Earls carrying strong. I think he had something like 21 or 22 carries in the game as well. He's really turning out to be a world-class player as well. But from New Zealand side and from England side, England, they could have won the game. Marcus Smith had to have a better day with the boot. Damien McKenzie as well. But Dunedin is not an easy place to kick. I have no experience kicking to goal. I've just heard what players do say about it. It's not really the easiest place in the world, to kick. So I think going into next week at the Garden, I think New Zealand will improve. I think they will improve. But it's not like England won't fancy the chances of breaking that, that record at Eden Park. Because the All Black team, you can beat them next week. They're not yet, they're still far from where they should be,
Oof. Breaking a record at the Garden. Vickers, Jade is bringing you into the mix, my man. Huh? Positioning is one of the key elements or key points because obviously the English rush defense was working perfectly on Saturday. There were a few 50-50 passes from the All Blacks. They made the All Blacks force a few passes as well, a few backdoor passes a few backdoor passes that weren't sticking. And obviously, as Jade said, Razor did say that they were just 1 pass away from actually working their way around that rush defense. Your thoughts on that game from the All Blacks on Saturday?
Yeah, just to touch on what you guys are talking about first, if you look at the way rush defense works with time and ball in the air. So if the ball is in the air, that's when rush defense is more effective. So the more passes that are not, intended for contact, then the more the rush defense is effective. So in that sense, usually what we do when you have kind of like blitz defense like England is doing at the moment, you play off your 9 most of the time. Most of the time you play off your 9, and because that means that ball is going straight to the forwards, and the forwards obviously have an option of just taking it up or obviously pulling at the back. So you use your 9, and also you use your 9 to attack as well. So if your 9 is scooting off the base and running a little bit, that normally keeps the defense in check. No one can come up because of the fact that the defense. Sorry, the 9 is, the ball is still on the inside shoulders of the defense, so they can't come up. So if I look at what New Zealand were doing, they were playing off their wide rucks. They were playing off 10. That made Mackenzie's job very difficult. I know all the Allblacks are mostly the only team that plays off 10 of the wide rucks. Most of the European teams, most of the South African teams now have adapted to playing with the 9 of the wide rucks and 10 of the middle rucks between the 2 15s. So it's something that to look at. I think the coaches, they're more experienced. They're world-class coaches, so they'll probably pick that up and see what they can do better. I did like the shape of New Zealand in terms of Damien McKenzie was in the same line as the 3 forwards that could be potential bull carries. I like that, because that creates uncertainty. I think Ireland did it a little bit. We saw that one try from them, that it was a similar setup. They just loaded the front line. So it's something that to think of in terms of when going forward. But if I look at the game itself, like you guys have said, England came out the firing blocks and they put New Zealand under pressure, and New Zealand couldn't find a way around that blitz defense. Again, blitz defense, there's a couple of ways you can beat it. It's making sure that you're using your forwards. I'm not even going to say the dummy runner, just blocking players. You use them as blocking players, and the ball goes from backline to backline player to backline player to deep backline player. That's the only way you can beat your rush defense. And obviously using your outside backs to, once they get around the blitz defense, is the pace that they can counter, that they can go with. So, and if you look at, I'm not sure how quick is obviously the outside backs, not the outside backs, the centers of England. So Lawrence and Slade, if you give that ball to Perfetti, or you give that ball to who's Talia, or even actually Xavier Reese on the outside, and it beats the defense, they will find it very hard to recover. I thought the scrums were not too bad, both sides. I think obviously England had a couple of wins in the scrums, and even when the young man, the 22-year-old, came on, I think he did very well in the scrums. So no one was getting really much purchase from it, but yeah. So at least one thing that we do know is that the game wasn't decided by that area. Although like Jade said, the lineouts were pretty much average from New Zealand. I think we didn't see any obviously dominance there. But but other than that, I think for me, they just need to go back and relook at how their tactics were towards the rush defense. And I think it's so easy to come up with a plan. I think, like I said, those coaches are quality. So they should be able to come up with some sort of a plan to just contain. I'm not going to say beat the rush defense, but contain the rush defense. And there are a couple of ways to do
it. Jade is hot on your heels there, because he clearly is clearly after you.
No. Before we bring you in here, man, that's just something I thought about. Was New Zealand's kicking game, the aerial game, actually surprised me because they didn't lose anything aerially during the game. I think Perfetta, D-Mac, Bowden, and the 2 wingers did well. And also we saw Jordie Barrett, stepping up a lot and taking those high balls. Do you see this as something that New Zealand can elevate the game with having somebody like Jordie Barrett, who is exceptional in the air, combating backfield, even though he's playing 12, also using, his clearance and his kicking ability there. Do you think that there's something that New Zealand was looking at, taking them forward, having a more of I would call it a hybrid 12, and then maybe pushing somebody like the Ardie Savia into the 12 channel and on defense, when it does become a kick battle? Do you see this as something that Razor can do, or will be looking at? Because we saw a glimpse of it yesterday with Jordy, stepping back and roaming, even though we were playing 12.
Yeah, 100%. You got it spot on, man. I think this is probably one of those moments where you have to start using your players who with certain attributes to benefit you. For example, if you remember what South Africa did, I think it was it wasn't South Africa. I think trying to think quickly when they were using it was Bulls. They were using Ulrich Low to be on the touchlines to try and compete against the wingers. That can easily be implemented. That can be easily implemented, especially with a quality team like New Zealand have. That's one area of the game that they could actually target. We know Talia is good in the air. We know Talia is good in the air. We know Jody Barrett is definitely good in the air. The question is, how good is Sever Reece? And also, in terms of the kicking, I also found that New Zealand were kicking too many 50-50 contestables. They weren't really landing at the right areas. And then when they were kicking, sometimes I felt they could have even kicked long instead of making small chip kicks where just allowed England back players to come on, run into the ball.
100%. I think also there was a lot of aimless kicking in that regard. I mean, the kick is only as good as the chase, that's what they usually say. But I mean, if you're kicking way too deep and your wingers cannot even get to the ball by the time the opposition fullback or the back three is catching the ball, then it's kind of aimless. I mean, this gave England an opportunity to also run back at the All Blacks, and All Blacks were in 6s and 7s in those particular counter-attack elements. So if you want to kick, I mean, there was only 2 kicks where I thought, okay, these kicks are actually good when Sever Reece got into a good position to actually make a tackle once the ball was caught. And I mean, in those situations, it's either you're both competing for the ball in the air, or once the opponent catches the ball, you are able to make an effective tackle in that particular moment. I felt New Zealand just gave away kicks. I don't know, maybe if Mackenzie was a bit rattled, or whether the scrum half, also the box kicks were not really quite accurate. I mean, this was the one position where Aaron Smith was quite good at, but now, since Aaron Smith has left, it's opened up a gap in terms of having accurate box kicking element, because that took a lot of pressure away from Richie Mwanga as well. But Mwanga also was able to kick accurately for those up and unders. Hugh, your view?
Yeah, I found the kicking game very interesting in the way that the All Blacks changed their tactic in the second half. In the first half, I thought they kicked for territory predominantly, which is what we've seen in Super Rugby as well, is the New Zealand teams prefer to kick full length. And I thought it was working for them quite well. One of England's main tactics is kicking contestable and trying to win it back and hitting on the chase and things. And that worked for them quite well as well. So I was finding that quite interesting, the 2 different styles. But then in the second half, New Zealand changed their tactics and they started kicking crossfield a lot more laterally and a lot more contestable as well. And it didn't go that well. I thought DMAC hit a couple that were a bit long, or they were either a bit long or the chase wasn't that great. And then there was one that was marked. There was only one that went kind of okay, and it was that Sever Reece hit on Furbank. And that's where they got the chase right, but it didn't result in probably the outcome that New Zealand were looking for. So I found that quite interesting. And then, of course, we saw when Beauden Barrett came on, I think I saw a tweet that said it was like New Zealand's dad had come on the pitch and was sorting it out. And that's kind of what it was like, kind of just put a hand on the tiller. He's still doing the thing which I saw him doing in the World Cup, which is kind of not really pushing what he could do in the 22. So he was always staying in the 22 to do the kick and then sending it long. He was never kind of trying to beat a man and then put the kick in. He was very, very, very risk averse, I felt. And I think that's been something in his game for the last year or so. But it got the result in the end. I think the positive thing from New Zealand is the amount of stuff that did go wrong, like the line out, like a lot of the calls. I felt a lot of players were kind of playing as if they had someone looking over their shoulder. They were kind of auditioning for Razor to keep their place in the team. DMAC particularly, when you look at his, he had 28 passes, I think 17 carries, 11 kicks. He was trying to do a miracle every time he had the ball. He was always trying to be the one to create a line break, and he lets perfect be the enemy of good. I think he was trying to just be special every time he got the ball rather than just adequate. And I think that's why people will now be looking at Bodie and saying, "Well, should this guy come back in because he showed that maturity?" So that's interesting. But from an England point of view, an All Black side that's in that much transition, that had so much go wrong with their, with their systems. They're still learning the system with the line out, etc. And they still lost. I think that's going to be disappointing from England, because I think England, that's probably about as well as that England team can play. So I think they'll just be really ruining that as a missed opportunity of a game.
Agreed. Final thoughts, Jade, of that particular game?
No, look, we summed everything up perfectly. I mean, you summed it up. It's going to be a cracker next week, because we're going to have to look at improving. Just remember, we spoke about, New Zealand playing off the 9 and, sharpening up the lineouts. And that just shows the gap that, Broder Retallick, Whitelock, and Aaron Smith left. And how long it's going to take, for them to fill that gap. So, yeah, unfortunately, TJ Perenawa looks like he's out next week. So, New Zealand news again and start with another 9. Maybe Christie will be the one, for them to play off, like Voyo said. But I'm looking forward to next week. I'm looking forward to improvements. I think, D-Mac gets another run next week before Bowden comes back. I think Adi Savia will be fitter, because I think he lacked test match rugby, intensity. I mean, it's different to what they're playing in Japan. The same can be said with Bowden Barrett. But yeah, we'll see next week how they go. I think they will improve. I think they'll put England away next week. And we'll see, what other innovations does Reyes and his team bring to the table.
Fair. Your final thoughts, Vickers, and then Hugh, you can also put in your final thoughts there.
No, I think it's all good. I think like Jade has summed it up very good. I think that's just the only thing we're just waiting for is the tactics. What change of tactics will they bring in for next week?
Fair. Hugh, before we jump into your Warren Gatland.
I definitely think that the All Blacks will be a lot better next week. Going to Eden Park, they'll get their cohesion. There'll be some really good work-ons from the game that they'll fix in training. So I expect it to be a bit more comfortable next week.
Yeah, awesome, gents. Just before we jump into the Welsh game, I think back in the 90s, I think Owen Gumane was in studio with Nas Botha. I don't know, I can't remember. Oh, I think Arnie was a host for SuperSport at that time. So during every single rugby match or international game we used to watch, so Nas will be the one that speaks first, and then the host will say, "Okay, Owen, your thoughts," and then Owen would always say, as Nas just said, every single time without fail. And now every time I'm asking you guys to finalize your thoughts, as Jay just said, as viewer just said. So it just reminds me of that moment. Anyway, hitting the 0-8 Welsh team, insane 0-8. Hugh, trouble. I saw a lot of tweets from the Welsh rugby fans. A lot of people are not happy with Warren Gatland. I mean, we've spoken about the current situation with Welsh rugby, right? There's the transition phase. They're trying to build. Warren Gatland had to scrap a lot in terms of starting over. I mean, there's the transition phase. Do you think the Welsh public, first of all, is patient enough to wait and see what Wales can do around 2026? Because I don't even want to say 2025, because 2025 is around the corner. Are you guys patient enough to wait?
That's a good question. How many is too many? We're on 8 in a row defeats now. 10, 11, 12? How much more? We've got another test against Australia. Then we've got a game against the Reds. I don't know what kind of team we're going to be putting out for that. And then in the autumn, I think it's Fiji, Australia, and South Africa again. So if we go, winning 0 games in 2024, what will that be? 11, 12 games defeated? Will people accept that? You have to remember that we're supposed to be representing a nation here. Wales is a small place, and rugby union is the thing that puts Wales on the map, really. So to be losing, to be dropping out the top 10 and to potentially dropping out the top 12. Is that acceptable? Is that what people are willing to see? I think the time will tell. You have to bear in mind that the attendance for Wales matches, as attendances for rugby are everywhere, the international games bring in much bigger crowds than the domestic games. So if the WRU starts seeing the Principality Stadium, it's not getting 75,000 anymore, it's getting 60, 58,000, something like that, then there's going to be a big concern for them. I don't know. It doesn't really matter talking about the result of this game because Gatland did not pick a side to win the game. If he was really bothered about obtaining the victory in this match, if he was really bothered about the outcome, he would have picked a different team. There are players in that Welsh 23 that played yesterday who shouldn't be representing Wales internationally. That's nothing against them. It's nothing personal. Simply what they have done in their club career so far hasn't merited being picked. They're being picked because Gatland has got ideas about what he wants the team to look like going forward. He wants to make sure that he captures some players. He wants to have a look at some players. But quite frankly, they're not the best players available to Wales. And they have come up against an Australian team that will never be weaker. It will never have more strife than it's been faced recently. And they've been beaten quite comfortably. I thought some of the play from Wales was very poor yesterday. I think that the centre partnership doesn't work. I think that obviously we have the problems up front. I think some of the back three play didn't work at all well either. So it's a very good question of how long will people give Gatland to build this team, because you have to say he's not showing that he's able to do it. I think Squidge Rugby tweeted that Australia have achieved more in one game. Joe Schmidt has achieved more in one game than Gatland's achieved in 7 so far this year. So yeah, it's not a good time.
And at the first 5, you had, what's his name? Was it Ben Thomas, if I'm not mistaken?
Ben Thomas yesterday, yeah.
Who does he play for?
He plays for Cardiff, but he's been playing 12 all season for Cardiff.
Ah, fair enough. And your original 10, where was he for this game?
Costello was on the bench, so Gatland said that he wanted to look at a bit of depth. I thought that when Costello came on, he completely revolutionised the team for the 8 minutes that he was on the pitch.
Yep.
But it's easy to do that if you are coming on late. Normally, substitute halfbacks often look better than the guy that they replaced, so not reading too much into it.
All right, fair enough. But what would you like to see now going forward into next week? Obviously, it's back-to-back test matches. What would you like to see from a Welsh point of view in terms of selection, in terms of on-field performance?
I'd like to see Gatland pick the best 15. I'd like to see him pick a team that is capable of winning the game. It's all very well, building for the future and things, but why are we doing this? No other team, apart from France probably, and they have got their own reasons for how much they rotated.
Yeah.
Every other team picks their strongest team and tries to win every game, and we're not doing that. And I don't think that's fair on fans. Yeah. So I would like to see Gatland pick the strongest team available to him and try to win the game. I'd like to see him. He's probably not going to change his mind on the centre partnership at the moment, but I'd like to see something different there because I don't think what he's selecting is working.
Fair enough. Vickers, did you catch the Welsh-Australia game?
Yeah, I did. But, it's just like you said, there's not much to go on about. I think Wales just need to think of something a different way. But I'm just going to take a different way here. If you look at what Gatland is doing with Wales, it's basically saying that I've offered to step down. You guys are not basically didn't want me to step down. So now I'm going to try and build my own system without any pressure. So I think that's probably what he's doing at the moment. And it's pretty sad that he's obviously he isn't won in the games and he's not looking like winning anytime soon. But what I think with this kind of situation that Wales have, when it comes to the players, the fans are the ones that are putting the pressure on WRU to obviously make a decision. But at the same time is that it just takes 2 or 3 games and then everyone sort of relaxes. So there's going to come a point where the head coach is going to need to target a game and actually go at it so that he can actually try and win the hearts of the people back, because at the moment, people are not getting any. They're not getting any hope within what is happening within their rugby, and I think that's one of the biggest things that the coach will have to recognize, that for him to be able to get his players to not to be bashed at on social media, but to actually start talking positively around rugby circles, is that he has to start getting a win.
Fair. Jade, your thoughts?
No, look, I mean, you see the nail on the head with when it comes to Wales and Cats. But I mean, like I said, this team's got to learn to grow together for a few years. So you're going to have to be patient, but also you want to see some improvement, as you move along. I haven't seen any improvement, since we spoke about this whole Gatland and giving this young team a chance. So maybe they have to rethink about it. I mean, sometimes it's not just, firing the coach there, maybe getting somebody else in, to help him, with another guy, maybe an attack coach or defense coach. That could be the spark that they need. However, for Australia, I'm happy for them. I mean, they've been through hell on and off the field. I mean, just look at the amount of players Joe Schmidt told they can leave. I mean, either went to league or they went to went abroad, play in Europe or Japan. So I'm happy for them. I like what I saw yesterday in terms of what Joe Schmidt is trying, having more structure to the attack, getting more structured play. I mean, that looked much better. So yeah, I'm happy. The crowd was there in Sydney. It was a sold out stadium. I mean, in Australia, it's been struggling to sell, to really promote the game that side. So for me, I'm happy. That's the team selected just on Super Rugby players. I mean, he didn't choose anybody abroad. He left the Kurubetis and the Karevis and the Skeltons, he didn't select them for the series. So I'm really happy they have a foundation to work from. They not near the finished article. They still won't win South Africa or New Zealand. But I think, Schmidt is really trying something and he's keeping one eye on that Lion series next year.
Hugh, then Vuyo.
Well, I've got a question for Vuyo, actually. So for you, as a coach, how many games would you feel under pressure for if you start losing them in a row? Say you had recycled your team, you pressed a hard reset button and you were building a new team. How many games would you be willing to lose in a row before you start thinking, okay, this is a problem now, we really need to start getting some results on the board?
I think there's no games as such, as there's no number of games. I think it's just a matter of what you see is an improvement in terms of, for example, you at this point to go minute by minute, you go, how was our first 20 minutes in this game? Yes, we were up there, but how was their first 20 minutes? They were also not good, so we cancel that out. So it's all about minutes and blocks and trying to understand what is improving and what's not improving. And for me, for example, if you take away the left wingers try, it's not Callaway, I forgot the other guy's name. Tom Wright. If you take away those two tries, both those tries are defense errors. And if you take away both tries, the game could have been much closer. But at the end of the day, that's the problem, is that who were those players that made those errors? I mean, one of them was who's the outside center again, Hugh? I think it's Tompkins.
Tompkins came off the bench, yeah.
He came off the bench, but a kind of player like that making a mistake defensively as a 13, that's already a big no-no. But obviously, looking at what was happening with the communication-wise, so even the team, you could probably even say the team even looks uncertain themselves. So, unfortunately, I don't think there's a number of games, but I just think you can look at moments, and up until you push a team a full 80, no coach will ever be happy, and definitely no supporters will ever be happy.
Vickers, were you going to answer that question, or because your hand was up?
Yeah, I was going to make the comment I was going to make based on the fact that the two tries were defense errors, not necessarily they weren't beaten. They were just defense errors, which is obviously we normally don't take that to the team. We normally put that on individuals.
Yeah, fair enough. I think to sum up a lot of what has been said about Wales rugby, obviously Jade did touch on how good Australia was and how much they needed this particular win as well, because you have two teams here who are currently desperate for a W. Australia coming from the back end of a lot of what happened last year with Eddie Jones. Wales team on a reset button as well. Two desperate teams. I mean, it could have gone either way. And obviously, those small details in either defensive errors or maybe the breakdown, which I thought was hard fought on. Wales had some good positive things to look at as well in terms of mauling. Their mauls were quite decent. Australia lacking that defensive maul element as well with their forward pack, but a few scrums going either way. General play, obviously the defensive errors like Vujovic had just pointed out, it's small tweaks that need to be made. And also from a Wales perspective, I think it's more about trust. And you have a lot of young players, a lot of players that haven't played together. And once Gatland can build that foundation of trust first, because the game plan is there, it's just a matter of players trusting each other on the field in order to work cohesively. And for Australia, you can see also a few rustiness in terms of not able to work together or haven't worked together in a while, and also working in a new system under Joe Schmidt as well. I mean, there's an opportunity for Wales next weekend, but I'm not sure because Australia are playing at home. It's going to be very tough. But let's see how they fare going into week 2 against the Wallabies. But yeah, not all hope is lost, Hugh, in this particular one, eh?
Well, no hope is found.
All right, fair enough. All right, gentlemen, moving on to the Irish tour to South Africa. A lot of talk during the week. Supersport jumping on board, creating adverts, cinema, people are calling it. Blockbuster. Vickers, talk to me. The Springboks finally getting over the line against Ireland. Finally. After 8 years of rugby, they lost to them at the World Cup. They lost to them at the end of the year tour. Finally, Ireland tours South Africa, the Highveld. 27-20, the Springboks over the Irish for the first time under Rassie. What did you see? What did you think? What are your key elements? What are your hot takes for this particular one? Talk to me.
I thought you were going to say for the first time. So I was waiting for that because there was a gentleman who wasn't happy with your statement. Anyway, look, we always knew it was going to be a bruising game on both sides. They were going to come out firing. I mean, that first ball carry from Sia literally made Henshaw like this is now a real test match between 1 and 2. I think for the Springboks, looking at how they approach the game, it was quite impressive. You can see a little bit of Tony Brown's hand in the way that the Boks attacked. You can clearly see they targeted Tim on the lineouts. I mean, Jesse Creel had a lot of ball carries. I doubt, I can't remember seeing Damon Dialende carrying from a lineout actually, unless it was off the peel. But most of the time, off the top, it was Jesse Creel, and it was targeted at Crowley making a tackle. So you could see they were attacking the wider channels to try and obviously free up the big runners, Sia on the touchline and Peter Steph on the other side. Yeah, I think the Boks are starting to be brave with ball in hand. I think they're starting to be brave. I think they literally came out and threw everything at Ireland in terms of how they wanted to attack. The kicking part was not so. There was not so much contestables because I think we were just obviously playing off. We were running a little bit more, especially between the two tens. Faf did have a couple of box kicks. We did kick long a couple of times. I think for us, I think for South Africa, this game was more like a revenge game, and obviously with just a bit of IQ from the two foreigners we got. Looking at our defense still, I think our defense is still obviously one of the best because of just the way we're coming off the line and we're making positive hits. I would like to see us obviously trying to not to man on man defense when it comes to our forwards, maybe to go channel for channel, because that will eliminate the try that Ireland scored. I think it was the reserve 9 Connor Murray who scored. I think that if we can try to do that, that's channel defense, not in terms of looking at man for man. And when I look at Ireland, I think Ireland came out to try and rectify what Leinster did. We saw a couple of drives actually from Ireland yesterday. We saw a couple of drives which actually put South Africa a little bit under pressure. Then other than that, they couldn't get, I could say, the flow of the game because the breakdowns were just ferocious on both sides. That was the one biggest issue, and I think I just saw the way they're presenting the ball, Ireland at times. They were actually, as soon as they were hitting a collision, they wouldn't be fighting to go forward, but they'll place the ball so that it's quick. And I think that's something that they were trying to innovate, some innovation they were using to try and get the box not to set on defense. But yeah, other than that, guys, what a test match! What a test match for both sides. Yes, the two tries that the Springboks got were both out of I'm not going to say luck, because Chesn's one, obviously, that was due to his mentality when it comes to rugby. And the second one was a scrum penalty, which is a penalty try. I think just other than that, if Ireland cut out some of those, I think next week we're in for a big one. And we're in for a big one. And as you guys saw, I think the stats were like the number of tackles, the number of missed tackles on both sides were almost level. And obviously the penalty counts just on both sides was just a little bit more than what they wanted. I think they usually say, Ireland usually say 6, but I think they were like up 9 at this time or more. But yeah, just small things for me. This was a proper test match. And I think we're going to see some innovation going to next week.
Oh, perfect. Hugh, your thoughts on that game?
Great game. I loved how close it was. I loved how the millimetres counted. If you look at the millimetres between James Lowe's foot and the touchline when he kept the ball in for Colby's try, you look at the millimetres, Doris being held up over the line by the box in the second half. That's what it comes down to at test level. And it was really interesting for me to see this Springbok evolution. A lot of people were talking about it over the Wales game. I didn't quite see it, but I definitely saw it in this game. The number of passes has shot up, 175 passes in this game for the Springboks. I think it will be interesting to see whether they maintain that through the Rugby Championship, especially when they play against the All Blacks. Will they stick to it, or will they go back to type? There'll be a very interesting story to follow over the summer, or the Northern Hemisphere summer, I should say. But yeah, just a fantastic game, a real test of the two. And if you watch the highlights, it felt like when you were watching it, a very nervy, scrappy game when you were watching it. But if you watch the highlights, there's some incredible tries in this. Like Ireland's 2 tries in the second half, the Conor Murray one with the kind of, it obviously wasn't a flying wedge, because I know that's a very specific thing, but with the like an arrowhead, with the deception, they overloaded the midfield off a goal line dropout. Love that. That was a fantastic move. You look at Ryan Bird's try right at the end to put some respectability on the scoreline. Love that as well. Scoreline kind of doesn't really tell the story of the game, because I know Crowley missed a couple of kicks, I think, but Pollard missed 3 or 4 kicks, which is very unlike him, at least not at test level. And so you look at that and think, if these had gone over, this is a 30 points win for the Springboks potentially. And that kind of suggests it was a bit of a hammering. I don't think it was a hammering, but there you go. And of course, the moment, the iconic moment, the ultimate South African rugby moment of a 5-metre scrum where they drive the ball over and get the penalty try. All that came from another millimetres moment where James Lowe, the ball skims off his fingertips. The kickoff from Sasha Feinberg and Gomezulu was probably too long, And if James Lowe doesn't touch it, the ball goes dead and it's a scrum on halfway to Ireland. But them's the margins in Test rugby. So I think Ireland will be looking back on this game thinking, we can fix a lot of that. But Springboks getting the job done. And this was a great example of a match where it doesn't matter that we're 4 years out from a World Cup, the result mattered. And it mattered to the teams that were playing, it mattered to the coaches. So fantastic. And I love all the drama the Springboks and the South Africans are creating around it as well with the promo videos. When they brought all 6 forwards off the bench at the same time and the announcers going, and now the bomb squad. I love all that. This is what rugby needs. This is what we watch sport for. So fantastic.
Hugh, I know you're also quite a big fan of WWE. Huh?
I think rugby can learn a few lessons from WWE.
Fair enough. Jay, are you ready for a clothesline?
Nah.
Are we talking about Samoa, by the way? Well, just that made me remember.
Or the rock bottom. Yeah, we'll have it.
Boys. No, I think you and if we were spot on in terms of the build-up, in terms of, what the game delivered. I mean, you just mentioned that the way the Boks, used that shape of having Sia and Peter Steph, running through the trenches. I mean, Sia enjoyed the game yesterday. He didn't look transparent and fat at all. He loved that game yesterday. So he, at long lost to see a carry like that, he had played with a little bit of freedom. He had a good hit out there. I mean, then, I think I picked up yesterday also with the Boks, they look good on attack at times. And you could see Tony Brown's input with Valley getting the ball. You could see Jesse Krill getting space. But as soon as, they get to the red zone or they get close to the 22 and, Ireland readjusts and resettles, I think that's where the Boks can show a little bit of patience and, go back to their strength, they carry harder to get into the 22 and so not force passes, not force moves. So I think that's what they got to learn. They got to learn to take this Tony Brown's playbook and, the stuff that made them good into World Cups and mix that two together to get the perfect platform. Because at the moment, I felt yesterday they were a little bit impatient, at times. However, they did well. A thing I picked up yesterday and going into the game, I saw that Ireland has Brad McCarthy, Byrne, Torres, and O'Malley, who are very good line-out jumpers. And the Boks went with Kwagga at 8 and Sia. And then they had Peter Steph, who's a static jumper, and they had Eben and Frans van Mostert. So South was going to do a lot of work at line-out time. He's the mobile jumper. He's mobile at line-out time. He's very, very good at it. I thought yesterday, if you're looking at the stats, the Boks lost 1 line-out, but Ireland lost 5 line-outs. And for me, that was a little bit of a surprise because that's normally Ireland's strength, is a line-out. Even when they deep kick to the corner, getting close to the Boks' 22, they floundered at line-out time. And that for me was a little bit of a surprise. I did also pick up with the contesting because a lot of people rate Peter O'Malley as one of the best, loose forward line-out options in the world. However, they allowed the Boks to, they weren't contesting that much at line-out time. And I think this also gets that phobia and that fear to know that the Boks have a very, very good maul. So if we do commit to the line-out, we do commit to contesting, they can sit on the maul if they get the ball and be in trouble. So I think that's also, why the Boks also did better at line-out time than them, where I felt that Ireland they could have contested more. If you do read to the line-out and you do read the Boks' team now, especially without Dwayne from Gatland there as well, was an extra jumper. I feel that going forward with the Boks, it's another week. They'll prep together. There's another week they get to understand the Tony Brown playbook. It's another week they can get forward. Andre Pollard left a few points on the on the board there. He basically kept Ireland in the game. For Ireland, to score 3 tries against the Boks, I mean, a lot of teams do that and they still lose. That is positive, but concerning for them going next week to Kings Park. How battered and bruised are they? Because they look battered and bruised after that game compared to the Boks. They didn't look that. And I don't think Ireland has the bench, guys, to really, keep the heat on for 80 minutes. There was a big difference between the starting 15 and especially the forwards that came on, Bob, maybe Ryan Locke. But I mean, when I saw the props come on, I knew the Boks was going to Now we're going to have the advantage of scrum time. Whereas we look at what Furlong was doing against Ox, he really kept Ox during the game. Ox didn't really have it always in the same with Portier and Malherbe. Although there was a few, 50-50 calls that went Ireland's way there yesterday. But yeah, I think that was, for me, that's the biggest downfall of Ireland at the moment. I don't think they have the bench to win the game next week, basically.
Fair enough, gentlemen. I've heard everything all three of you have said. Now I want your thinking caps on. Thinking caps on, analytics caps on. Vickers, I'm going to start off with you. Seeing how the Springboks started off that game like a house on fire, using the width, playing in the 15 channels, every single time they spread the ball out wide. Hugh, we've also spoken about how international teams usually kick between the two 10 meters. So 10 meter, halfway, 10 meter. They will usually go for an up and under contestables. Springboks have moved slightly away from it, but there were a few times where Henry Pollard, when they were not going anywhere and the Irish defense stood up, that's when Pollard decided to go for those up and under aerial contestables. But Vickers, from what I saw, the longer the game went on and the more phases the Springboks had to play, the slower the game became and the more 50-50 passing from the Springboks element in terms of once they got into those wider channels, you could see Peter Steff, he would almost run the ball dead at times from the right-hand side and to the left-hand side. And also Kolisi, after that bump on, was it Henshaw? After that big bump, he had a few opportunities as well where he could have given to KLA, but Peter Steff also could have passed to a Chelsea Colby on 2v1 situation, but he decided to die with the ball. I mean, those small errors and those small elements and that in that detail, because if we're going to run the ball a lot and we're using the width of the field, in 2v1 situations, you want that ball to go to Kurtley Aronson. You want that ball to go to Cheslin Colby. I mean, what more should they be doing? And also Jesse Creel a few times. Yes, he had a lot of carries, like you said as well. He was man of the match. But a lot of times they run the ball dead, where there are plenty of opportunities out wide in terms of drawing and passing. I mean, in this template from a Tony Brown, what more does he need to do now to get these guys over the line? Because the Springboks, I think they could have scored more tries there. Because Kurtley Aronson with that Irish fullback one-on-one, I mean, that's a try. Cheslin Colby with the Irish fullback one-on-one, try written all over it. What more does Tony Brown need to do now to get the finer detail from the template they're using currently to see them over the line?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, with having the Springboks played the way that they play previous years, it's almost like that game plan that they've had before has been engraved in them, and that's what made them world champs, and that's what they believe in. So changing someone's habits is going to take a while. So it's not going to just take one Worlds game to make you think that you can do it. So as Tony Brown, probably the best thing that he could do at this point is sitting down with JC, sitting down with Peter Steff, and sitting down with Sia. Just those three players, and just showing them the opportunities that they had to pass the ball instead of taking contact, and that could make a big difference. Because not the whole team needs to know that, but just the couple of guys that are in positions that need to be aware of the kind of situations that they get themselves into on the field and that they can use. I think when it comes to like you guys are saying about a couple of phases, once the game started going, just getting slower and slower. That's because, remember again, if you're not used to playing at this tempo, if you're not used to playing at the speed of the game, I'm going to say the intensity of the game, then that's going to take out a lot on your players in terms of your forwards, because they will need to be obviously fit enough. So that's a question that obviously the coaching staff with the SNC will have to look at in terms of how much meters did they have in the first 40, and comparing to their previous structure from last year or World Cup. So those are kind of small things that you can look at and try to see how you can equip your players to be able to play this kind of game. And again, it's the two structures that the same players are having to implement. So it's something new that we need to give the Boks time. As you have said, it will be very interesting if they're going to take the same attack structure to the Rugby Championship, because we've seen something like this before, and it was literally scrapped. So it will be interesting if they take it forward. And just on Jade, when you made a comment about Sia, if we can go and analyze just Sia Kolisi himself in terms of his game for the Springboks, the more Sia Kolisi carries ball in a game, the better he has in terms of that game. He's a better player, and he's a better all-round player in that game when he's carrying a lot. The more he's not in the carrying zone, he's just cleaning and obviously being in those, doing the dirty work, you never see Sia, but also he always has not a good game. So knowing the way the player comes from in terms of his number 8 days where he was a big ball carrier, and to now, I think you can still see for him, the love of carrying the ball is still in there. Unfortunately, in the Springboks, is always required to play a different role. And it's for the first time this past weekend, we've seen it in a long time, where we see a carry like that.
Fair enough, Vickers, fair enough. Hugh, looking at the template now, you said you struggled to kind of see it against Wales. Now you've kind of seen it against the Irish team. Now looking at the 10s, you've got Sasha, you've got Handré Pollard. Look at that particular game plan or the template that the Springboks are using under Tony Brown. Who do you think is more suited between these two fly-offs to actually execute this game plan to the T?
Oh, so I have to stick with those two, because I think the best person for that game plan is Manie Libbok. Because I think that Sasha is special. Well, Sasha is a special player. He can do anything. But he is such a threat as a strike runner. And if the Springboks want to play off 10, then do they want a strike runner or do they want a distributor? If they want a distributor, I think Manie is better for that. Whereas Sasha can be the guy who hits the line. He can be the guy who makes the difference with the ball in hand. So if they do want a guy to be the conductor, to be the orchestrator, ball in hand, I think that could be Manie. Now, what that means, what you do with Sasha is interesting, because with the distribution game, do you therefore want to keep Villiers le Roux in the game? Villiers le Roux is getting older, but he's still having a massive say with his distribution. Some say his passing is the best in the world. Does that mean that you move Sasha to 12? Now, the question with this new game plan is, Damien de Allende, Springbok legend, rugby legend, incredible at what he does. The Springbok coaches now have to ask themselves, do we want to change Damien de Allende's game and keep him in the team? Or do we look to find a new answer at 12 for this new game plan? And that's a big decision. That's why Rassie gets picked. That's why Rassie gets paid the big bucks, because that is a hard decision to make.
Fair enough. Jade, same question to you. Your thoughts? Who is more suited for this game plan and structure?
It's difficult because we haven't really seen Sasha in big matches compared to Handré Pollard. And if I'm going to put my head on the block and say Sasha, I'm basically going on potential, and not in terms of being there, done that. You had a valid point in terms of Manie Libbok, because he is definitely one that that can play this game plan and he's a good distributor. Pollard, he does struggle at times with distribution, but then again, Pollard has also won World Cup for South Africa. So between Sasha and Pollard, it's difficult for me to say Sasha, because Sasha hasn't really done it. We haven't seen him do it. I'm just speaking on potential. And if you're gonna go on potential, if you're gonna take Handré Pollard's potential, and you're gonna take Libbok's potential, and you're gonna take Sasha's potential, I think Sasha's ceiling is higher than the other two. So yeah.
All right, Jade. Sticking with you again. forward packs from Saturday. The Springbok forward pack versus the Irish forward pack. You spoke about depth lacking from the Irish side. And obviously the Springboks have plenty of depth. I mean, a guy like Steenkamp coming in at Loftus, we saw what he did against Leinster about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And now doing it again and earning a penalty try at prop. I mean, what are your thoughts regarding this young prop? And also, what are your thoughts regarding the two forward packs from Saturday?
You know, on Friday, I had a discussion with Rian de Preer. He played a few tests for South Africa, and he's a scrum coach at Gray. He's a scrum coach at Ex-Request now as well. You know, he's a Cheetahs legend. And I asked him the questions in terms of, scrummaging in South Africa and, everything. And, he actually, his answer was, South Africa's lucky with their pack because their props play around the world. And the IP there from scrummaging and from, learning different tricks and trades, they get it from playing, some of them playing France, few of them playing England, few of them playing South Africa. So that IP coming with a guy like Dan Newman, who's old school, that gives him that advantage. If you look at what Steenkamp did the weekend and Koch did the weekend when they came on, they didn't hold back. It was basically when Furlong and Portier played scrummed up against Malherbe and Ox, you could see that they were going to video footage. They were going to what they were taught by the scrum coach, what the game plan was against those two. Don't allow Ox space, don't allow him to get under you. Don't give them the heat. Try and come close on the heat. All of that. But when it came with those two from the bench, it was a completely different ball game because they also did some analysis as, what was Furlong and Portier did. And also Portier and Furlong, how long can they still go on playing 65 to 70 minutes in test match? I mean, they've been doing it for long, for Ireland. So that's the problem. I think for Ireland, in terms of the problem, I think they need to get Ollie Jagger in there because for me, I think he's a much better scrummager than Beaton. And he's also done it against, South African teams in the past, in his early days with the Crusaders. So I think he has that experience. I think he's a much better scrummager than Beaton. And I mean, Cian Healy, this might be his last tour, but they definitely there's a different class between them and Portier and Furlong. So in terms of the depth, South Africa has it because of, our four pack is strong. I mean, we can choose 2 4 packs in South Africa and really compete against any team. They will be evenly matched. Ireland is different because, they have some world-class players starting and then the bench is really not that strong. So that was the difference between the two.
Vickers?
No, because of the previous conversation, I just wanted to pose a very good question, I think, in terms of to Jade and yourself, Scoop. I'm not sure if Hugh knows a lot about the depth of Lukhanyo Am. Isn't this now the time to actually move Lukhanyo to 12 because of the current game plan and let Jesse and Dialende bash it out at 13 in terms of just the way that the new game plan could fit in the system with the players we have?
Scoop, I'm not handling that smoke, bro. You go at it.
I was about to say, okay, Jade, that's yours. Well, as Jade just said, no, I'm kidding. That's a very interesting one because now, okay, thinking cap on. I wasn't even ready for that. But I think Lukhanyo can actually play 12. He's got the body, he's got the physique for the 12th position. And obviously looking at this particular game plan, like you said, Vickers, earlier, listening to what you said about Jesse Creel being used as the crash ball element from the line out set piece. And then obviously can act as a second distributor because I think he's got very good vision. He's got very good footwork. And I think he's got a very good pass on him left and right. So this game plan, because you have the forward pod in front, they've included the forward pod or the forward pod, in front of the ball carrier. And now, if you notice how the Springboks are playing, so from the deck, there will be a pod of 3 or 4 forwards, and they'll pass to the wider forward. That's the fourth guy. So the guy who's closest to the ruck, that'll be A, B, C, D. So they'll pass to D a lot of times to kind of hit it up in the middle. That sucks in both the midfield of the opposition, and then that swoops around, and obviously that pass at the back would actually suit him quite well in terms of running at space, number one, and also having the vision to either offload or have a grabber, because I don't think, or I haven't seen a lot of those touches from Damien de Allende at 12. So with the capabilities and the ability that he has, I think he would make a good 12 in this current game plan. But obviously, once a Springbok revert back to the normal game plan, then I think Damien de Allende comes into his own and obviously carries quite well. He's very strong in his carries. He's very direct. I think would be perfect. Actually, I don't know if that answers or gives you enough for that particular question, Vickers. Jade, your turn.
No. Listen, I like Damien de Allende at 12. I like him and I like Eastern at 12. I think that's been a part of South Africa's DNA that we had going forward from Rassie to go having a big, strong 12. But then again, if you look at also when Damien Willemse came in at 12, we look at when Elton Jantjies played 12 against New Zealand in Wellington, the change that did have to the box, they got more width, they got more, fluency in their attack and the advantage. They won the game in Wellington, and they also won the game a few times when Damien Willemse slotted in at 12. So there is a positive change. But then again, like you say in Scoop, I haven't seen much of at 12. I don't think can't play 12. I think he's a world-class player when fit. I think he can slot into 12 easily. But yeah, there is positive changes if we're going to move a guy like into 12, like we've seen when Elton played, then when Damien Willemse slotted in at 12. It did well for the box because it gave him that width and different attacking pictures,
Yeah, at the back of my mind, I was thinking Aaron Major type of player. Is actually I don't know because if you still remember the Aaron Major esque.
Yeah. Aaron Major, and it reminds me of it's just because he played 13 all his life and he had good 12s with Sonny Bill Crotty and Nonu. That's why he never got a chance at 12. But I think Conrad Smith could slot in at 12 as well. And I'm similar to that, that similar kind of player, world class, reading the game, linking up. So I think, I'm could slot in 12 easily.
He is actually at 12. He did play 12. It's just that he hasn't played a lot at 12 in professional rugby. So, because he played a lot of his rugby at 12 until obviously he got to the box. So, yeah, I think for me, with this kind of game plan that we have now, it will suit him perfectly. But also, if you can have a guy like Mane Lebok at 10, Pollard at 12, still works perfectly the same as well. Because when you're in trouble, Pollard will be able to carry, with no problems. Yeah, but anyway, that's a conversation for another day.
We a quick one before we move on. In terms of his body, in terms of how he's feeling, do you have any inside info, anything going on? Because he's been struggling the last 2 years, with his body and stuff. Is he fine now? Is he 100%, or what's the latest on him?
Sorry, mate, I wouldn't know. I think at this point, with him, is just trying to make the squad. Obviously, the SNCs are working a lot with him. I think for me, look, to be honest, I think this break is quite good for him. I would actually even go as far as leaving him out for the rest of this year's rugby and just bring him back next year when he's refreshed. But unfortunately, he is got a contract with the Sharks, so he will be playing in URC and Champions Cup. But yeah, I think for me, it just needs to take time of rugby a little bit, man, and just fix his body, because he did look like he was struggling towards the back end of URC and Challenge Cup.
Fair enough. Hugh, you wanted to touch on Samoa making history against Italy.
Well, it's not really making history. They've won 3 home games in a row against Italy, I think, and maybe even some away games as well. So I think we discussed it, Scoop. It's funny that Samoa are thought of as a tier 2 nation when actually they've got a better record. They've beat more Tier 1 nations than a lot of others. I think they've won 16 games against what are officially Tier 1 nations. They've beat more Tier 1 nations than Fiji, than Georgia. I'm not sure if more than Italy, but getting close to Italy. More than Japan. And I was doing a bit of research and I was looking back at the Samoan team. I'm sure everyone on the call will remember about the Samoan team from 2010 to 2013 that was very unlucky not to get out of its pool at the World Cup and was really challenging teams, beat Australia, beat 3 Six Nations teams in one season. So, yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to Samoa and kind of the perception that people have of Samoa as your typical Tier 2 nation. Samoa actually win more than half their games. And they've got a very good chance of winning a lot, if not all of their games this season. They'll be going into the Pacific Nations Cup full of confidence. And I just think it's interesting that the last 5 years before the last World Cup, in terms of some of the hammerings they were taking, it's more of a blip really than the rule. They just a hell of a nation, and I'm enjoying learning more about them because arguably it's tough to classify them as a Tier 2 nation purely on results.
100%, you 100%. The other result on Saturday was France beating Argentina at home. I mean, unheard of. Jade, did you get to catch a game?
No. Listen, I'm not going to talk about France international team until Dr. chooses his full strength team. So he'll get my respect when he respects the opposition and chooses full strength team. Only saw the highlights, Scoop. Only saw the highlights, but we know Argentina are terrible at home. I mean, what is they? Who put the stat up? They only won like 9 home games in the past.
9 games in 10 years. They're terrible at home. Imagine being an Argentinian rugby fan. Like, they have to, if they have an away game against anybody, it's like a 12-hour flight, no matter who they're playing. And when they play at home, they lose all the time. It must be rubbish being an Argentinian rugby fan.
And none of them actually play the rugby at home, actually. So that is why, they're accustomed to playing in other countries. But I mean, there's one to keep an eye on, Argentina. I mean, especially with this under-20 crop they do have now. I mean, it looks like a strong crop coming through for them. And a few of the sevens guys that might, dropping to 15s. So keep an eye on that, on their development. But yeah, they got to do better at home, especially with the amount of passionate supporters they have that side.
No, fair enough. Yeah, before we
Scoop,
close,
it's funny to Scoop. It's funny to hear Hugh say, "Imagine you're an Argentinian fan." Scoop, Hugh. Imagine you're an Argentinian fan. You must be lucky you're Welsh. So it's still early days, mate.
What?
There's an area of Patagonia where they speak Welsh.
Who?
In Patagonia in Argentina, there is a community of Welsh speakers.
You have a question for you before we move on.
Yeah.
Maybe you can answer this because nobody can answer this. Argentina, wherever they play, any sport around, especially the rugby, around the world, they have a good following. And I mean, you always see thousands of Argentinians in the crowd. Why are they so well spread? Do you know?
I've got no idea. I work in the automotive industry, and there's a lot of Brazilians in the automotive industry who are very willing to travel. And when you talk to them, they're like, yeah, we move all around the world for work. It must just be a different attitude in that part of the world, I'm guessing.
Fair. That probably makes sense, actually, because I've also got a few Argentinian colleagues at my work.
James, whoever put a spell on Argentina scrum since the late 2000s needs to take it back, because I've never seen an Argentina scrum those guys that strong go back like they did yesterday. It was terrible. Oh my gosh.
It was a tough watch, actually. Both Argentina and France. I think that first half, single-digit scoreline, and then obviously France, moment of brilliance here and there to kind of actually take the game away from Argentina, and Argentina had 0 responses, to be honest, in that particular game. Anyway, gentlemen, lastly, basically, Jade, I want to ask you one thing and one thing only. Looking at the under-20s, New Zealanders, looking at what they did against France, looking at the Springboks under-20s, who do you see, actually looking at the English boys, who do you see taking this championship this year?
England. Honestly, with England, I think those guys has played more professional rugby. than the other nations. France has been hampered by injuries this season. This was this tournament, and a few of their guys is playing for the national team. New Zealand, I mean, they've lost a few guys to, and I think Cody Vai and a few other guys for the sevens, and then Rampling and a few guys got injured. I don't see anybody stopping England winning this thing. I think their team is settled. They will show they were good in the Six Nations. Guys play in the Premiership. So, yeah, I think England will win this thing because they can play both games. They can play when it's wet and raining. They got the physical pack to do that. And when it's dry, they can spread the ball around. So I think England will win this one.
Hugh, who do you see winning?
I'm just distracted in a moment because it's the end of the Formula One and my driver is about to win.
Who's about to win?
Lewis Hamilton has just won his first race in 4 years.
Fantastic. Yeah, how far is he from the finish line?
He's just crossed it.
Okay, cool. Anyway, back to England. Not England.
Sorry to anybody who was trying not to hear the result.
Vuyo, who do you see under 20s?
I'm going with England or France. I think once we get to the knockout stages, it could go either or. Because what I think, yes, as much as France doesn't have lost a couple of players, but I still think they're good enough
to go all the way.
To go all the way. I think that if we could, because South Africa lost, I think if England beats South Africa will be out, and that will put Argentina in as a second team, and then you go on points difference. But I think in terms of France will definitely be the other team in going into that semi-final.
But then it'll be France versus England, and then New Zealand versus Argentina.
Yeah, versus Argentina.
Oh,
yeah, possibly.
Tough.
Argentina will be out. It will be England, Ireland, New Zealand, France.
Yeah, because it's the top ones, which is 1, 2, 3, and then it's the best out of the second place.
If France gets 5 points against Wales, I think most likely they'll go through. But then Ireland will play England or New Zealand. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. No, fair enough. All right, Jade, sticking with you. All Blacks, England.
All Blacks will win it. They'll by 15 points this weekend. They'll be much better. It's at the Garden.
Issue. All Blacks, England.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same as Jade. 15 points win to the All Blacks.
Vickers.
All Blacks, 6 points.
All right. Australia, Wales, Vickers.
Australia by at least another. Okay, no. But if he changes the setup, so I'll probably go Australia by 5.
You?
Sorry, was this Wales, Australia? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh God, I don't care.
Jade.
Australia will win it by 2 tries, by 2 scores.
Okay, Jade, last one. South Africa in Durban against Ireland.
The Boks by 12.
Cheapest. Hugh?
Ooh, I don't know. Boks by 3.
Vickers, last one.
Boks by 20.
Damn. All right. I see you. All right. Thank you very much to our listeners. Thank you guys for joining us once again to the Rugby Scoop Podcast. We're recording live. We are based all over the show. Vickers is in Russia. Hugh is in England. He's a Welshman, by the way. Jade, all the way in Bloemfontein.
Scoop, can I say something to Scrubbing Flower and Dubs? I know they enjoyed their time with Harry Jones and everybody yesterday at Loftus, but in case they missed it, Fiji won, Samoa won, Australia won, and New Zealand won. So that's unbeaten Super Rugby this weekend.
Ooh, nice touch. Scrubbing Flower can stop tweeting about Super Rugby. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week. Follow Vuyo Zanga at Vuyo Zanga. Follow Hugh Griffin at Hugh Griffin Rugby. Follow Jade Craig at Jade Craig 07. All right, guys, see you next week. Enjoy the rest of the week. I'll be putting up a few threads looking at obviously some of the things we've discussed today and some tactical stuff that has taken place over Saturday's international games. Have a wonderful week ahead. Enjoy your Sunday. Have a good dinner. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, everyone. Ciao.